Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It is the Thursday, February 12th, 2026 episode of The Marco Dre Show. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to hear today's groundbreaking news right here in America and across the board, where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's begin the best of radio, informative, uncensored, unapologetic, and ready to go. I'm very pleased to announce to everybody listening that the SAVE Act has passed the House yesterday evening with only one Democrat voting for it. Not a shock here. Henry Cuellar of Texas. He is a congressman on the southern Texas border, so not really a shock there, but no one else in the Democratic Party could support this bill for election and integrity? Really? Now, I believe Thomas Massie was the only Republican that voted nay on that. I haven't heard his response as to why he did that. But generally, he has a decent response as to why he's doing what he's doing when it seems controversial. Now, it is in play now in the Senate, where it needs the 60-vote threshold to pass due to the filibuster, as we know. Leader Thune needs to show some grit here and get this passed. We're already hearing from the likes of people like Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska that she's not going to vote for it. So it seems like it's going to be an uphill battle. He needs to go and get the votes. He's got to reach across the aisle, work with Republicans as well to get this passed. Okay, this is what needs to be done. Voting no on this bill at this point only makes sense if you don't want a free and fair election in our country, or if you believe that this will help your chances of winning. Now, most politicians just want to stay in office. Really, that's all they really want to do. They want to keep getting reelected, cash in on the insider trading. That's it. That's all it is. It's not because they want to make America a better place. If that were the case, we'd have a great country right now. So this is going to be an uphill battle, though, for Republicans, but it's a good hill to die on, because we now need to, again, clean up our election procedures, the voting rights that we have in this country, which are sacred to we, the citizens. And if someone else is voting that should not be, that is negating a citizen's voice in this country. It's treason. Who is going to stand up for that? I really want to see Chuck Schumer get on the floor and explain to the American people why, by the way, this bipartisan issue among Democrats, Republicans, independents alike, that has the approval of 83 to 84% of Americans supporting it, that he can't do this. And again, I'll just say this before we move on. Opposing this may have real consequences, no matter what party you're in the upcoming election. I will just say that to you. And by the way, in other news today, I just want to say, too, just really quickly, I wasn't a huge fan of his, but James Van Der Beek, the actor, died yesterday. Really, it seemed unexpected to me. I didn't know he was ill with cancer, but he died yesterday, very young, a family man, father of 6. For all intents and purposes, seems like a really great guy. I didn't really watch too much of his... I don't really watch television, so I didn't know too much about him. But when I did watch him in anything I saw him in, I thought he was always a terrific actor. So I'm very sorry to hear that he passed so early in his life. And my prayers go out to his family and his friends at this time. Very, very tragic to see such a young, inspiring person to die this young. So I just wanted to bring that up to everybody as well. Let's get right into the news of the day. We got lots to go over, lots of things happening. No shortage of that in America. Let's take a look at the BBC. We got 4 takeaways from yesterday's Pam Bondi's testimony, largely over the Epstein files. And it did not go well for her, as one could imagine. Pam Bondi she's horrible. First of all, I want to say before we even go into what she had to say, she is god-awful. Why President Trump even picked her, I'm still to this day confused about this. But this woman is insane. At any point did she make any type of rational sense about why she's doing what she's doing? And by the way, we could say, oh, well, the Democrats are asking her this because, well, they just, they're Democrats. Okay, but still, they're asking her questions. If the truth is on her side, she should be able to answer this easily, and then we move on. We didn't see that yesterday. What we saw was deflection, was ad hominem attacks, pejoratives used to deflect from the real issue. What's going on with this Epstein case? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? Now, in this 4-hour hearing, she just lashed out basically at anybody who was challenging her. That's really what it came down to. So here's one of the things too. We've got the Epstein victims that were actually in the hearing as Bondi testified to defend these redactions, really helping out the accusers here. These are the people that are assaulting these young women, and I did see a male there too as well. And then she had no response to this. Now, in her opening statement, she called Epstein a monster, told the victims she was really sorry for the abuse that they endured. Fine, great, whatever. What are you going to do about this now? Is that it? You're sorry about this? Okay, then hold these people accountable. Why are you holding up redactions left and right for these people that are assaulting these young people? Or anybody for that matter. It doesn't matter if they're, well, it does matter obviously if they're children, but I mean, adults too? We're not going to hold these people accountable? Why is violence toward anybody supposed to be held, in this light? She seems to pass it off like it's nothing. I don't understand it. Now, thankfully, the lawmakers directed a litany of complaints at Bondi about how the Justice Department's shortcoming has handled its release of these files. And again, several people have then criticized what they said was a failure to redact the names of the victims as required by law, which she did not do. But make no mistake about it, any person that could be incriminated, their names were redacted 100%. Absolutely 100%. Now, I don't like Pramila Jayapal from Washington. I can't stand her. Anytime she speaks, I cringe. That's how much I don't like her. But she had a very good point yesterday. And she said in some cases, nude images of survivors were actually released in these documents, some of whom had their identities protected for decades. Now, Jayapal asked the survivors in the room to stand up and raise their hand if they had been asked to meet with the Justice Department, which all of them, had not been able to meet with the Justice Department. All of them raised their hands. Jayapal then urged Bondi to apologize to the victims of this mishandling, and Bondi fired back, describing Jayapal's questions as theatrics, adding, "I'm not going to get in the gutter with this woman." I mean, she's just a loser, this Bondi. She hasn't arrested a damn person, Russiagate, J6, COVID, Benghazi, anything. Who's she going to arrest? Is she going to actually do something that she said she was going to do? This is the woman that said, "I've got the book on my desk right now. We're looking at it right now. And there will be arrests." What have we seen from this other than deflection? Absolutely nothing. This woman should be ashamed of herself. She should really resign, but she's not going to, unfortunately. But she was then asked by, I believe it was Jamie Raskin, again, another person I do not like. But again, I'm a person who's objective. If you're asked a solid question, a pointed question about actions you have taken, doesn't matter if they're Democrat, Republican, Communist, I don't care. Answer the damn question. She refused to do that. Take a listen yesterday when, again, she was asked, and this was her response.
The Dow right now is over. The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan.
I'm sorry, does she think she's the Treasury Secretary, or does she believe that she's the Attorney General of the United States? The leading law enforcement officer in this country is Pam Bondi. And this is her response? The Dow's doing good? So what? The Dow's doing good? Therefore, we're not going to arrest anybody? Don't worry about anything else because the Dow is doing good? How many of you listening are invested in the Dow Jones International? I'm not telling you shouldn't be invested in it, but again, how many people give a damn about that over violence committed by a satanic pedophile who's wrote some of the most nefarious things in emails to other people? Elites, politicians, you name it. in these emails, pictured with them. Don't you care a little bit more about that than you would, hey, how's the Dow doing today? Oh, it's up $2,000. It's a record high. I shouldn't have to worry about anything else now. My God, I think my 401k is doing great today. My goodness. Let's forget all about that Jeffrey Epstein and that Ghislaine Maxwell. Don't worry about that. No. Don't look the other way. This is who these, again, deflecting for whom? Who are they trying to protect? Because that's clearly what this is, of course. She also sparred with Thomas Massie and a little bit of a back and forth. Massie was the Republican who had been involved, of course, in these efforts to release these files, him and Congressman Ro Khanna. Massie then went on to say this issue is bigger than Watergate, and I agree with him. It's absolutely much bigger than Watergate. Bondi fires back, this is a political joke. As Massie continued to press her as to why on some people's names, including billionaire Les Wexner, had been blocked and blacked out and redacted from the files initially. Wexner had previously alleged that Epstein stole millions of dollars from him while working as his financial advisor. So, again, he's got these contacts with all these big people, okay? And yet, why are you redacting these names of people that are associated with him? This again, these are the big questions not being asked. Les Wexner gave this guy $77 million after he was convicted in 2006 in Florida for, again, trafficking of a minor. Why would Les Wexner give him this money? This doesn't make any bit of sense. But again, he's named as a co-conspirator. Massie asks why you're, again, redacting his name. She has no answer for this. Again, it's just pathetic. And again, she's not saying anything about any new investigations when she was asked about this. Lawmakers asked her about Prince Andrew, or I guess the former prince. I guess he's got his name slashed off from the title now. Congressman Ted Lieu, again, can't stand him. But he asked a serious question about this. He mentioned, obviously, again, Prince Andrew, who's facing growing pressure from officials, and of course the family of Virginia Giuffre to testify in the United States. Why hasn't Bondi been making this happen? He actually had to dish out money to some victims, did he not? Isn't that something of some interest, Pam Bondi? No, not at all. But again, Andrew has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. That's, again, very interesting to me. We see him in a picture on all fours over a woman who's, again, her face is redacted. Again, there's no context for the reason why and what is happening in this picture. He's got his hands on her. And this is very odd. This is, again, very, very odd. These pictures are disgusting. And yet she has no response to any of this. It doesn't make any bit of sense. By the way, he's getting some blowback in the UK as well. Actually, police there, finally, at least someone's doing something, are actually examining his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and have actually spoken to prosecutors and are assessing whether or not there is a case for misconduct in the public office. So we see the UK is actually doing more than our DOJ here in the United States. And by the way, there's a lot of blowback happening with these officials inside the UK. We saw the same thing happening with Lord Mandelson, the former British ambassador to the United States. He's now facing an investigation relating to the same alleged offense, which again carries a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. Now, both Andrew and Mandelson have denied any wrongdoing, but we can't get to any of this because what is Pam Bondi doing? What is going on here? We see Prince Andrew's name here in the emails that allegedly he tortured a woman. Again, folks, we can go and see this. We can go look through all this. There's 3 million pages of this. There's talks of, again, I'll just repeat it to you because this is what we're seeing. Anyone that cares to look at it. We're talking about rape. We're talking about trafficking minors. There's some other thing, killing people. We're talking about sacrificing. I can't. It disturbs me to tell you this. Now, there's other things too that involve infants. There's a use of the word goyim, which again means cattle, livestock, slave. Obviously referring to non-Jewish people, of course. I was glad to see Sean Ryan actually bring that up in one of his podcasts with Ro Khanna just recently. He's like, what does this word mean? And Ro Khanna's like, I think it means a slave. Well, it means cattle. That's what it really means. They're referring to you as cattle. Now, does that mean every Jewish person believes that? No, of course not. But this is how Epstein and his friends are talking to one another. Mocking a woman that they tortured and murdered for believing in God. Again, folks, it's all there. You can go look at it. Don't just take my word for it. I told you to do your own research. It's all there. But this is sickening that we're seeing absolutely zero type of investigation, any type of people looking into this. You're seeing the same exact thing said from Todd Blanche. Well, we have nothing to move forward on. Really? I've told you this in the past. I'll repeat it to you again. All they need to do is take those witnesses that were sitting behind Pam Bondi yesterday, take each and every one of them and go through and say, what did you see on this island? And then you could piece it with probably what's taking place and what's said in these emails and actually build a case on this. Oh, there's 3 people that saw Prince Andrew doing X, Y, and Z to so-and-so? So-and-so who's dead? There's a lot that can be done here, and it's not being done. And it's very disgusting when it's these top elite politicians, donors, business class, whatever you want to call them. And nothing's being done about this at all. This is what's upsetting the American people. We're not moving on from this, by the way. Caroline Levin, who said this, I think, yesterday. Oh, we're going to move on from it. No, we're not. Because if our donor class is being blackmailed by the likes of Jeffrey Epstein, who has ties to Mossad and Israel, we know he's great pals with Ehud Barak, the former prime minister. Something is at play here. And who's he collecting this information for? Mossad to blackmail? Whoever's leading Israel at the time? We should know this. So we should know what's in these pictures, what's happening. We should know what's taking place in any video recording. We should have these names redacted of the perpetrators. And, of course, keep the victims' names, obviously, should be redacted. But Pam Bondi screwed that up, too. By law, by the way. And still in all, I didn't see this asked yesterday. She was supposed to give us an explanation on, I believe it was January 3rd. She was supposed to come out and explain why the files have not yet been released. They were all supposed to be, every single one of them in their possession was supposed to be released on December 19th. That was per law. She made no explanation of that whatsoever. Still, and today it's the 12th of February. Why do we still have roughly 3 million pages out there that they haven't released to us yet? What's in those files, for God's sakes? Or does it just take more time to redact even more further? Or is this going to be even more redactions in this next batch that we may get at some point in the near future? God only knows. By the way, some people are obviously capitulating to this. They're saying, well, the Trump administration right now, the DOJ is shorthanded with, obviously, the attorneys to go through this and obviously to find people to prosecute. Give me a break, first of all. That is completely irrelevant. First of all, it's the DOJ's fault. I saw someone yesterday online saying that it was the Senate's fault to confirm the Senate attorneys that need to work for the DOJ that would go out and obviously indict people and charge them. That's a bunch of nonsense, first of all. There was massive firings. There was mass resignations. They can hire people whenever they want. Yes, there are some positions that the Senate has to confirm, but that's about 200 people. They're about 115,000 personnel short in the DOJ right now. So don't blame this on, well, they're just shorthanded. They're not doing it. You're telling me nobody's looking at this right now that they can build a case on? It's a bunch of nonsense, too, by the way. Absolutely ridiculous. And, one of the things that's very striking here, especially with this Prince Andrew case, there's these investigations, these allegations, of course, by Virginia Giuffre, apparently that he had intercourse with her when she was just 17, after she was trafficked by Epstein to London, of course. Again, he had places all over the world, folks. It wasn't just down this island. He had places all over the United States, all over the world. And in 2022, though, this is the kicker. The former Duke paid millions of pounds to Giuffre, despite claiming he had never met her. And ironically, she died of a so-called suicide last April. So this begs the question, maybe Pam Bondi could answer this for me at some point, I don't know. Why would Prince Andrew, who claims he's never met this woman, even though there's a picture of the two of them together, regardless, obviously he's lying, but why would he pay her millions of pounds if there was nothing that took place, obviously illegal, between them? That's a question everyone should be asking themselves. Why is he paying this money out? So again, I'm glad to see that at least some law officials are looking into this and what's taking place. I'm glad he's been stripped of all of his titles and what have you and his residencies. And this is disgusting. This is absolutely disgusting. But this is what we're figuring out now. Who some of these people really are. And I will just say this. Just because someone's name is mentioned in something doesn't mean they're instantly guilty. I believe in the rule of law. I believe in innocent until proven guilty. I do. But you can't sit here and tell me that nobody except Epstein and Maxwell are hanging out with all these people all the time and nothing else has happened that's illegal. This is why we need these investigations. This needs to happen. And sadly, for us, I don't think we're ever going to see that. But this is where we are right now. This is what the American people are so miffed about. We want to see justice done. Pam Bondi needs to get to work on this. Otherwise, what the hell's the point of having her in this position? If we had a Matt Gaetz, if we had a, what's his name? The guy I like from Texas. I can't think of his name right now. He's the current Attorney General of the state right now. Fantastic guy. His name will come to me in a minute. But we need people that are in there that are actually going to be doing this. This is what we need right now. Ken Paxton, there it is. It comes to mind. Okay, there we go. Had a Biden moment there, folks. I'm sorry. Ken Paxton, he's fantastic too, by the way. Absolutely fantastic. I think he would go right after these people, personally. I hope he would. But again, we can only hope, right? By the way, before we move on from this topic, this is in the California Post. It says here that Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, I call him Howard Lunkhead, that's what he is. He's a complete lunkhead, admitted on Tuesday that he actually did visit the late sexual predator Jeffrey Epstein's private island after FBI files debunked his claim that he broke off contact in 2005. Well, why would he lie about this, folks? I mean, come on. Come on. He's above the law, right? Lunkhead, who's 64, confessed to senators that he had 2 encounters that he can recall. Oh, I'm sure he could only recall them. With Epstein after 2005, even though he, of course, denied having any contact with him, including a 2012 trip to his so-called pedophile island and drinks in 2011, as revealed by the FBI's January 30th release of case files. See, they forgot to redact his name. That's probably what happened. They said, oh, here, Lunkhead. Oh, we'll leave Lunkhead in here. Don't worry about it. Oh, they just had dinner. Don't worry about that. All the big stuff we got to redact. Don't worry about that. More black markers, folks. Look, we had lunch on the island. That is true for an hour. Lunkhead told the Senate subcommittee, describing the stop as an innocent and brief stopover with his family. So he brought his family to an island where kids and young women, and possibly young males too, obviously, are being sexually abused by the donor class, elites, whatever word you want to use. That's what's taking place here. By the way, the island is super weird. There's a temple on this island, I told you. That is true. That's been confirmed by photographs. I've told you this in the past. I'm glad to see that it was corroborated, of course, in the photographs. But look at this. We left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were all on a family vacation. We were not apart. I don't recall why we did it, but we did. Why would you stop for an hour at an island and have lunch and then leave? Again, when you're on a vacation? That seems a bit odd. Where the hell is it going? So again, you can never trust any of these people when they say these things. The visit occurred about 7 years after Lunkhead previously claimed to have broken off relations with his neighbor, Upper East Side, Jeffrey Epstein here, who pleaded guilty in 2008 in Florida to soliciting prostitution from a minor before facing a federal charge in 2019. Yep. So why would you have communion, fraternize with somebody who is a pedophile, who's trafficking a minor, soliciting them for prostitution? Would anyone listening do that? Of course you would. You have morals. I can't say the same. for Howard Lunkhead, sadly enough. Let's move on, folks. NBC News. We've got to talk about what's taking place in Minnesota. And it's nothing positive, of course. At least not to what I'm reading. Now, speaking at a news conference in the city, Board Czar Tom Homan said that he coordinated with local law enforcement and the success of immigration enforcement have contributed to the end of Operation Metro Surge. Now, he says, I've proposed and President Trump has concurred that this surge operation conclude. Now, I don't know if this is because he's getting pushback from the protest there. We haven't seen much of that in recent days. We know that it's continuing on, but it's not as hectic as it once was in the very beginning after the death of Alex Preddy. So the announcement comes a week after the federal authorities shot and killed two U.S. citizens, sparking outrage around the nation and, of course, around the world. Now, on November 29th, what took place, of course, was the 3,000 immigration agents brought to Minneapolis. They were sent there in what was dubbed Operation Metro Surge. And again, they're supposed to be searching for illegal aliens all throughout this city. It's a sanctuary city. So naturally, it makes sense that people would reside there because there's no threat under the law that they would be detained, handed over to ICE, and then deported out of the country. This is why these areas are bastions for illegal aliens. Now, the latest we're hearing is that the people that they're going after are the violent offenders. These are criminals. These are criminal illegal aliens. They don't belong here. They're not making our community safer. So these are the people we're just going to target right now. And I say that's not good enough. Even Tom Homan said, if you're in this country illegally, you're not off the table. So then why are you leaving? Are we to believe there's only 4,000 illegal aliens inside a sanctuary city? That doesn't make any bit of sense to me. Now, Homan said he's not removing all the federal officers for safety reasons and that the immigration enforcement will continue. So then why are you doubling down and giving into what they are saying? They're saying to get the hell out of their city. Are we capitulating to them? Are we saying, hey, you know what, the protest made us change our mind? Things are out of hand. Are we to expect that if the protest hadn't happened, if things had just been continuing on, we would just simply leave already? So the city of 400,000, and of course a 600 police force because of defund the police, of course, Jacob Fry kowtowed to that. Are we actually going to kowtow to this now? I would keep, again, if we have people there that we know are illegal aliens, I would keep everybody there. I would keep it until everyone is out. To show them, hey, we're going to follow the law. We're going to follow federal immigration law. We will follow the Constitution. We'll use warrants. We will identify ourselves. And you will be responsible, like you should, for crowd control to make sure that no one in ICE comes in contact with any type of protest. No one is harangued. No one is harassed. That's local PD's job. That's the way it should be. As a result, you're seeing things work more accordingly. But the idea that there's only 4,000 people in this city, come on, folks. Come on. I mean, we know they can find these people. We know they can, obviously. And now we're just saying, well, we got 4,000. We're just going to pack up. We're going to head out. I would continue on. I would stay there until everybody, either convicted of a crime or not, that is there illegally, is no longer in that city. And that's going to send a message. Hey, even if you're in a sanctuary city, you're on the table right now. We will come in and find you. We will get you. And I think in the long term, that is going to have a greater effect on people coming to this country illegally. Because they know, hey, there's no place for me to hide out anymore. Even if I'm in the former great state of California, I can't just hide out anymore. There's 1.2 million illegals just in LA alone. Are we going to go to LA next? Where's the next big takedown? Because we've got millions upon millions of illegals all throughout this country still. And the numbers of mass deportations aren't even close to being met right now. Of course, I'm happy the 4,000, criminal illegal aliens are off the streets. No one's upset about that, I don't think. Maybe some of the protesters are. I can't imagine why. Actually, we see some of them, breaking down in the streets, of course. But this is the problem we find ourselves with. Homan says, I don't want to see any more bloodshed. Okay, I don't want to see any more bloodshed either. This is why state, local police need to work not with the operation, but to control the crowd so they can do their job. And had Jacob Frey, had Tim Walz done that originally, you would have never seen this happen. And the talk about immigration enforcement has caused everybody so quickly to move away from the massive fraud that has been taking place inside Minneapolis and Minnesota itself. Isn't that so convenient for both of them? So if I were Tom Homan, I would say, you know what, we're staying. We're keeping our presence. We'll continue to carry out federal immigration law. And you should work with us. That way we don't see any more issues in your city. If you don't want to work with us, well, then get ready for more chaos, I suppose. I don't want to see this. I don't want to see people shot in our streets. I don't want to see this. But when you let these paid agitators, which is what they are, come into contact with police when they are conducting a raid or what have you, the likelihood that something goes wrong will happen. We saw that with Renee Good. We saw this with Alex Preddy. It's unfortunate. It's awful. I told you before, if anything's unjustified that the officers did, they need to be held accountable. Did you notice, though, that everything kind of fell quiet, though, once it was figured out that both of the officers that fired at Alex Preddy were of Latin descent? Didn't you find that interesting? Everything got quiet really, really quick. Nobody's saying a damn thing about them anymore. So it just goes to show you, it's not consistent. It's all orchestrated. If there was real outrage, obviously you would see the streets still in complete chaos right now. But they've been called down. They've been told to tamper down. And of course, you see the federal government falling in line with it. So Homan needs to stay strong here, I think. He should keep people there. He announced last week that the administration would send 700 agents home. I would keep everybody there. I would. Again, just to show people that you are serious about this. Zero tolerance. Okay? Means not just for the residents interfering with immigration authorities, but that you're not going to come here in this country illegally and reside here. You're just not going to do it anymore. We will find you and we'll take you out. That should be the motto of ICE right now. Sadly enough, we're not seeing that to a T, unfortunately. All right, folks, this all comes to my next point. It's very important to everything. Why do we see so many Americans that are complacent? So in other words, why do we see Americans that get this information, for example, that we're a country, obviously a sovereign nation, that we're a nation of laws, we're a nation that has borders, we're a nation of citizens. How is it that we have this disconnect with the people in the streets, the paid protesters by and large, that they can't figure out that we have actual federal immigration laws? And then they're mad when we deport people, but yet they say we have no borders. No human is illegal. So which is it? Are we a nation or are we not a nation? And if we're sending someone to another country, what's the big deal? There's no human is illegal anywhere. Apparently, if it's true in the United States, it must be true everywhere. But this is the rhetoric we're getting out of the college campuses, and of course it's repeated on the nightly news by the left-wing mainstream media, of course. But why can't Americans see through this? I think there's something a little bit deeper going on, and obviously that's the collapse of American education. Paul Craig Roberts wrote a great article today about this. I want to share this with you. He says 40% of U.S. fourth graders cannot read. Okay, that's terrible. Even if you can read at their grade level. That's really bad. He said one teacher responsible for 110 eighth graders reports that only 2 can read at grade level. Now, I don't know why a teacher would be responsible for 110 students. Obviously, there are class size limits. Usually those extra kids get thrown into a phys ed class or an electives class, if you will. So that way the core classes will have really more than 30, 35 students in them at a time. That could mean that the student just comes in contact with 110 students every single day, though, not just given at one time. Here's the problem we have here. We have so many schools now. We talked about this we talked about this earlier this week, didn't we? I told you about the failing test scores, how the NEA does absolutely nothing to improve them, ever. Nothing is done to improve them. We're seeing the grades go down across the nation, not just in certain parts of the country, but overall, it's going down. And a lot of people are blaming this not just on the lack of desire to learn, but the idea that AI is a big culprit of this. Now, I agree with that to some extent. I do. I don't think that's the main reason. I think it's making it easier for kids to get by. So I think the standards have been watered down even more than they already have been. But one of the issues I think we're facing is we have, obviously, the lack of desire to learn. There is no more value to learning. Why do I say that to you? Because if you're just going to pass students along, and they don't have to earn anything until they reach high school level, they're getting, what do they call those things? Participation trophies, if you will. If they're just getting rewarded, and they're not achieving anything, there's no real desire to do anything, is there? If everyone's told, hey, we got to boost up the self-esteem movement in this country, every single person is special. Without, again, achieving anything, without any proper behavior. If you're just told you're special just because you're breathing, you're going to be someone who demands a lot from people without doing anything, aren't you? So what we see in schools now, by and large, and I know because I taught for 11 years, you see kids that don't value anything. If they get a bad grade, it's your fault. If they can't keep up with what you want them to do, it's, again, your fault, of course. And everything has to be watered down so they can make it by. Again, lower outcomes, lower standards. That's the way it's going to be. So we see, though, that we're raising a generation in this country right now, right? And it's incapable of functioning at really any job. Certainly not understanding domestic or foreign concerns. They would be, not understanding anything I'm talking about on this show. That would require any type of public input for democracy. That's extremely important for democracy. That's what our founding fathers wanted. They wanted an educated populace. And by the way, up until about the 1950s, 60s, we had one of the most educated populaces in the world. Again, at the time, we had the best public schools in the world. There was an understanding you're going to go to school and you're going to learn. You will respect your teacher. You'll get your homework done. You'll be there on time. You're not going to make any noise in class. Now, of course, things happen, of course. But by and large, you are sitting there and you're doing your work. Now, in effect, without an educated and thinking populace, there could be no real democracy, can there, folks? That's why we have people believing everything they just hear off the mainstream media. Therefore, the failure of education means, of course, the replacement of our entire political system with God knows what else. I can imagine that would be a communistic-type country, an autocracy of some sort, a tyrannical government in place. But here's the problem. In the world of AI, where everyone's looking at a screen all day, okay? You're not writing anymore. You're not writing notes like I did when I was in school. You're not reading the book. You're looking at a screen all day. You're just watching videos. We know that when you write information out with a pen, you're more likely to remember it because you're remembering the motions. You're remembering what you're reading. You are writing it down. When you're just typing keys, right, onto a screen, that really means absolutely nothing to you. You're just typing things out. You're most of the time copy-pasting. What the kids are doing now in public schools with AI, they're simply just saying, print me out a paper based on X, Y, and Z. It prints it out, you put your name on the top, hand it in. That's what we're seeing now. There's no sitting down, there's no studying, there's no researching. Certainly there's no reading. Not by a long shot. And as I told you before, we are passing kids through without them being competent in that grade level. So that becomes a massive problem, I would have to say. So what they're talking about, though, this adverse impact of the AI on just learning in itself is the latest stage of the collapse of education. Now, one of the other things, too, has taken place in recent decades, not so much anymore, but that would be the destruction of neighborhood schools. And Paul Craig Roberts highlights this because, again, I think he is 86, 87 now, if I'm not mistaken. He's from Georgia. And he says the destruction of neighborhood schools was a big problem in the beginning of the decline of education. What's he talking about? Well, he's saying that people of the same socioeconomic class fit together in a more manageable way in a range of different types of abilities that they have. This makes it more possible to hold students to the same standard inside the classroom. Some students will do better than others, but there is not this large difference in the result where many who cannot fit in with that same standard, is what he's saying. So, for instance, everyone in one neighborhood, right, that goes to the same surrounding school, that person, those persons, or students rather, they're probably going to be on the same page academically. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Kids in Beverly Hills will probably perform differently than kids somewhere else in the country, right? You have a higher socioeconomic setting. That school's demands might be higher than, say, an inner city school, for example. Doesn't mean everyone is genius at that level in Beverly Hills and that everyone is stupid in the inner city. Far from it. But what they're saying is, as a result of this, as a result of the integration, right, when they try to bus certain kids to different areas, to integrate the schools forcibly to different socioeconomic classes under the same standard, the result was that some kids could not meet that same standard. So instead of questioning the policy, what the result was, they blamed everything on racism. It's racism to hold kids to a higher educational standard. And as a result of it, that educational standard was lowered. But not just for those students, for everybody. Other deteriorations also followed. For example, we talk about what take place in the classroom would lead to, obviously, degenerated into things like chaos. And, of course, loss of teacher control now is what we see. I've seen this, too, in my time as a teacher. Many teachers today will actually tell you that they're behavioral managers, babysitters, more or less, not teachers. This is all part of the downfall that we are seeing in public education. I do want to play you one thing, though, from Dr. Thomas Sowell. He's one of my favorite economists ever, probably. And one of the latest things that he just came out, he's 95. He'll be 96 this June 30th, by the way. That's the day I started my podcast, by the way. He talks in his latest interview with Peter Robinson of Uncommon Knowledge at the Hoover Institute. And he said, I want to focus on education today in this interview. And what he says here about standards and about affirmative action, which again also took place during this time that Paul Craig Roberts is talking about, with the integration, with the affirmative action for college admissions, so that again still exists today. Where is this leading us to as a country? Is it a nation of critical thinkers, problem solvers, those that can identify logic and what have you? Or are we just trying to pass people around for things like DEI? We're seeing this play out today in the business world, are we not? Listen to what he has to say, though. I think you'll all be very interested by it.
Well, there's a lot of talk about how whites and Asians lose when they have affirmative action for blacks and Hispanics. And that's true. But I think that the blacks and the Hispanics and other such groups lose far bigger. This came to me back in the 1960s when I was teaching at Cornell. And they decided that they would bring in black students without having to meet the same standards as the other students. Very soon, it turns out that half the black students were on academic probation because they weren't they weren't meeting the standards of the work that they were facing. And so I went over to the administration building to look up the SATs of all these students who were being admitted. And I found that the average black student admitted to Cornell University scored at the 75th percentile nationwide.
Which is good.
Yes. But of course, the average liberal arts student at Cornell scored at the 99th percentile.
So what you see here, they are simply taking students of a certain race, in this case, black Americans, and saying, we're going to put you in Cornell, even though you haven't met the proper standards. Does that mean every black student that goes to Cornell hasn't met those standards? Of course not. Of course not. But when you just take a group of people and say, we need this number of people in admissions hiring to come to Cornell University because we want to look a certain way, you're bringing kids in that can't meet the same standard. And as you heard him say, there's academic probation for these students who would otherwise do great someplace else in another college. And what he goes on to say in this interview, which again is very sad to hear this too, a lot of times these students just simply drop out of the college experience. They never graduate, they never obtain the degree. And there's obviously, people will blame it on something like racism, by and large. So because somebody had the genius idea to say, hey, we're going to integrate a university, or we're going to have quotas for our missions, or what have you, who's the real loser in all this? It's the students that they grab, that say, come to court, don't worry about it. Your SAT scores are much lower than what we'd expect, but we'll accept you anyways. Now, on the abstract, that seems nice, right? I mean, who the hell wouldn't want to go to Cornell? It's a beautiful college. I've been on the campus several times, by the way. But this is the problem we're experiencing in this country when they do this with college admissions. Now, today, they've just simply dropped the standards all across the board. This is how they're getting away with this today. Just pass kids through. They're stuck with God knows how much debt now going to these Ivy Leagues. I'd say well into the six figures. But this is a problem across the board. We're not working on competence in the subject matter. We're not working on competence in the critical thinking, the problem solving, any of that. Keeping up with a higher standard, expectations, all that goes away. All you're getting in return is what? A piece of paper, by and large? Now, one of the things he says, too, he said, in my early schooling years, he said education degrees were relatively new on the scene. Those that had taught my generation, again, he was born in 1939, so he's coming through in the college and, high school, mid-50s, if you will. Mid to late 50s, I think. Going out of college after that. He said the subjects that they had taught were, for example, a math teacher had a math degree. So they had just had a degree in math. It wasn't a degree in math education. History teacher had a history degree. English teacher had an English degree, and so on. Most teachers were teaching because they loved the subject, of course, and their appreciation of the subject passed on to the students, giving them an interest in math, history, language. Today, though, teachers had competence in the subject matter than, of course, in educational theory. So we see how things have shifted, of course, in the last couple of decades. Now, again, we can come back full circle to the AI. But if we have students that, for example, today, the decline is so great that the competence of the high school graduates that are coming out, you have checkout clerks that aren't permitted to even exchange customers their change, especially in the equivalent for smaller bills, because they don't know how to do it. You call customer service representatives. Very limited, if you can even get one, that can provide any type of help for you. The problem's got to be moved on to a level up for another supervisor. To get an issue resolved on the phone could take 30 minutes, an hour, half a day now. When back in the day it would resolve in roughly 3 minutes, if you will. So today we're seeing a big transformation in the quality of just anything across the board here in America. And the reason is because of lower standards, lower expectations, and of course things like affirmative action and DEI, which don't help anybody out. So meritocracy being dead is a big part of all this, absolutely 100%. But now we've got something else in our way. Now we've got the AI. And whatever AI spits out for the students, they're just going to believe it. They're just going to believe it. Everyone will think the same. Whatever AI says, that's the answer. No question, because they don't know how to question. They don't know how to think for themselves. Whatever those databases say will be it. And again, there's be absolutely no more challenge to the AI narrative at some point. What do you think that leads to Americans today when they hear things coming out of the same influencers that spew the same exact nonsense? They say the same exact thing over and over from story to story, news channel to news channel about a particular topic. You have one side saying one thing, another side saying the exact opposite. There's no middle ground. So, in my approach to anything, I look at things objectively. I do. I don't say, is this right as a conservative? I say, is this right or wrong? Is what we're being told actually happening? What is the relation? What does the Constitution say about this? Is this even constitutional? Is what we're reading even factual? Where are they getting these statistics from? And once you dig deep enough down the rabbit hole in many of these issues, you come to find out that a lot of times you're being lied to right in your face. Sometimes you might realize that when we do our weekly economic report. When I say, hey, we're being told this, but look what's really happening here. Look what this person's saying about what we're seeing and this trend forecast. And why are we seeing these stocks going up so great? What's happening behind the scenes? They never tell you this. So while it's all smiles and sunshines in some situations, in general, sometimes things really aren't as they say. And that's why I tell you, always do your own research. AI can be a great tool for you if you know how to research and ask questions. But if all you can do is regurgitate what's on your header as to what your assignment is, and have it punch out information for you, you don't know how to think. And I think a lot of that has to do with kids not reading anymore. They're more glued to a screen than there is reading books or what have you. Getting outside, getting outdoors, they're cooped up for a long time. And that's why you see the behaviors in the classroom stemming more and more out of control. This educational collapse, I think, will really do wonders on us as a nation. Should this continue, if there's not any type of abandonment from the way kids are being taught today. And that's why I always tell you, higher standards. Higher standards always demand more of what's happening to your children in public schools. And a lot of times the standard has to be set with you. That's another thing that we're missing in a lot of our public schools today, too. Parents that really are concerned and value the learning and what's taking place in the classroom. Folks, we got some problems, too. Let me talk to you. I want to move on to, again, since we're critical thinking right now, let's move on to Trump's meeting with Netanyahu yesterday. We weren't really told much about it, unfortunately. And this is what Trump wrote to Truth Social yesterday. He said, I've just finished meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel and various of his representatives. It was a very good meeting. The tremendous relationship between our two countries continues. There was nothing definitive reached other than I insisted that negotiations with Iran continue to see whether or not a deal can be consummated. If it can, I let the Prime Minister know that will be a preference. If it cannot, we will just have to see what the outcome will be. Last time Iran decided that they were better off not making a deal, they were hit with midnight hammer. That did not work well for them. Hopefully this time they will be more reasonable and responsible. Additionally, we discussed the tremendous progress being made in Gaza and the region in general. There is truly peace in the Middle East. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Okay, so problems with this. Many. Absolutely. First of all, this is all we're getting from this? They only talked about a deal? Then why during a time of negotiations with Iran is he doubling down on sanctions on Iran if we're trying to work on making a deal? That's what I want to ask you. Doesn't seem to make any bit of sense. Did Netanyahu really come all this way just so President Trump can tell him that he wants to buy his own military-grade weapons and not rely on the United States? And that President Trump has to tell him that we'll continue nuclear talks? I mean, folks, this could take place on the phone. That's not a very long conversation. Now, we've heard this before. We're in negotiations. Last time we were in negotiations in the final rounds with Israel, they decided to go ahead and, with Iran, rather. Israel then bombed them with our blessing. Folks, you don't move an entire armada with an aircraft carrier, 3 destroyers, a carrier air wing with 65 to 90 aircrafts costing about $12 million a day at the bare minimum just to sit there. Now, it's entirely possible Trump could be bluffing right now. He could see what Iran will do, if they will cave to seeing this armada so close to them that could hit them, and maybe cave to his and Netanyahu's demand, which are really Netanyahu's demands. Let's just be realistic. These are Netanyahu's demands. I personally don't buy this. I believe that once another round of talks ends with Iran defying President Trump, what he's going to do, he will try to say, listen, we gave them another chance. They refused. We said, let's make a deal. We said, no nuclears. They said, go to hell. Now we're going to go to war with them because, we have to. Because Iran's invaded us 0 times in its entire existence, I think. So they leave us with no choice. This is the same thing akin to what Rubio was blaming Hamas for the widening number of death tolls in Gaza. And of course, the Palestinian civilians that have died as a result of this. So now we come closer now to possibly a war with Iran and this idea there's peace in the Middle East. I have no idea where he's getting this from. Netanyahu's broken the ceasefire. We know this is true. One can only imagine how abortive peace would actually function when you have a territory being bombed every single day. And again, under the guise of killing Hamas. Well, they're violating UN Charter Article 242 every single day. We've got 20 to 30 people killed in Gaza every single day. So sadly, there is no peace for Gaza, and of course, there is no peace for Iran either, as of right now. Or really the Middle East for that matter. Especially if this war does take place, there will be absolutely zero peace in the Middle East, and it will be an all-out war. And there will be people that come to Iran's side in that region. Is it going to be Israel and the United States versus several other different countries? Well, only time will tell, folks. Only time will tell. But that's a big takeaway I took from yesterday's so-called meeting. I don't buy what we're being told right now. I think we're coming very much closer to a conflict between us and Iran, and I think Israel will join us in that effect, and I think other countries will join Iran in that effect. And I can only pray that Russia does not get involved with Iran, because that would be very, very detrimental to the world's security as we see it. The White House, by the way, let's go over this last article today. I had so many more articles for you folks, but again, I always run out of time at the very end. The White House made a late-minute statement to avoid the government shutdown for DHS funding ahead of its Friday deadline. And it seems like President Trump gave a legislative text of some sort of offer to the Democrats on Capitol Hill yesterday evening. But yet the Democrats, again, are unlikely to accept this text. We're already seeing leaders rejecting the proposal from earlier this week, calling it incompetent and insufficient. So it does seem like the spending bill will probably set us into another short government shutdown. They're always talking about now how the stopgaps they want in place for DHS need to be agreed by the Republicans, this 10-point plan. And I told you before, I think we should give it to them. I 100% say we should give this to them. Why not? I don't know why we wouldn't. Let's give them what they ask for. Give them everything they want, and then we'll say, we're going to tack on this too as well. If you want ICE officers with no masks on, anyone that doxes an ICE officer is going to go to jail for 25 years. How about that? Again, if they're going to make these proposals as a minority party, as the opposition, okay, we'll give you everything you want. We're going to tack this on too. There's got to be some sort of insurance that our troops, our agents are going to be safe in the streets. That's just the way it's got to be. And anyone that says otherwise, we're simply not going to go through with this. These are the steps we have to take. We have to show we have a spine here. That yes, we can make certain concessions that are good for both sides. I think a lot of what they're proposing is good, to be honest with you. And again, we need to hold our federal agents accountable. That's not a problem. But when they come out and say, we're going to do this, and we just say, no way. Make more concessions on your side then. Say, okay, you want all this? Fine, we'd like you to also agree to this. Anyone that doxes a federal agent that's not wearing a mask, since you don't want them to wear masks, they're going to go to jail for 25 years. How about that? Violation of this, they're going to go to jail. I mean, if the Dems want that would make things a little bit more interesting, wouldn't it? None of them are going to do that, though. But at least it gets people seeing what's going on behind the scenes. That's what we're seeing right now. I think I have a minute left, so let me go over one more thing really quickly, folks. All right, look at this. This is, well, I figured this was going to happen. There was backlash even amongst Republicans in Congress over President Trump's sweeping tariffs yesterday. Despite one last-minute effort by the White House officials to stave off the public party schism, the GOP House voted to overturn Trump's tariffs on Canada after 6 Republicans joined with House Democrats to rescind the emergency declaration the president has used for a basis for imposing taxes on imports from one of the United States' closest allies. Republicans still largely back Trump with a vote totaling 219, excuse me, to 211. Now, let me just say this really quickly. This is the right move because Trump was not following our Constitution. We know this. He was not. How do I know this? Well, because of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. That means the power of the purse, the power of taxation, folks, comes down to one branch, and that branch is the legislative branch. And that's what Trump has been circumventing this entire time. And again, I don't know why people haven't seen this. He's trying to get around what's going on, him and Mike Johnson, with, the emergency economic powers. Well, folks, we've been in debt with other countries, trade deficits, since 1934. Nothing's new there. And yet, this is what we're seeing as a basis for this. It was unconstitutional. So I'm glad to see us taking some powers back on this. We'll see if the Supreme Court also follows through. Folks, thanks again for being here today. I appreciate you so much. Share the show. Make sure you're keeping your hearts, minds, bodies strong. Have a great rest of the day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good. Stay busy. God bless.